Hello, I'm Sachi Yanari Rizzo, curator of prints and drawings here at the Fort Wayne Museum of Art. Every other month, I will be presenting an in-depth discussion of a topic related to the museum's collection of works on paper. These will coincide with exhibitions in the Print and Drawing Study Center that highlight themes found across the Fort Wayne Museums of Art's collection. Today, the talk is called Town and Country, Prints from 19th Century France. We will look at two popular subjects that emerged, the town or city and the country. Our time period begins with Napoleon III's Second Empire, dating from 1852 to 1870. It was a time marked with the emergence of a leisure class and the impact of a modernized, reconstructed Paris. Urban planner Baron Georges Eugène Haussmann brought Napoleon III's vision to fruition. Napoleon III and Haussmann's ambitious city plan opened up spaces, making broad, straight arteries through the city. And we can kind of see a large cross shape formed by streets on this map. The arteries terminated in symbolic architecture or monuments to the past and future. Buildings were erected according to a uniform standard. The Louvre was expanded, Notre Dame Cathedral was restored, and the Paris Opera House was built, all exuding grandeur. Droves of rural people migrated from the countryside to Paris in search of greater opportunities that the city had to offer, including jobs, higher wages, free schools, and social programs for the poor. This also made some areas overcrowded, and they became riddled with crime. In the 1830s, the population of Paris was just over 860,000, but in 1861, the population escalated to just under 1.7 million. The city plan and redevelopment came to be known as Haussmannization. It entailed rebuilding sections of Paris destroyed by the previous revolutions by clearing away the narrow, winding streets and slums of the medieval city. We see a hint of the old Paris in the photograph on the left from the 1860s by Charles Meryon, who was given the task of documenting areas that were destined to be demolished. To make this transformation a reality, they razed buildings and displaced largely working-class residents. Félix Buhot's print from the 1870s on the right shows us the Paris that we continue to think of today. New public buildings and fashionable apartments, parks, streetlights, and especially wide tree-lined boulevards replaced congested streets and ensured against future insurrections, too wide to barricade. Infrastructure improvements included modern sewers and a freshwater supply system. The results were 85 miles of new streets, 4,000 acres of new parks and other green spaces, and 24,000 new buildings. Charles Meryon's etchings of Paris from the 1850s recorded the changes impacting his beloved city and his working class people. Some historians suggest that they were a defiant reaction to urban renewal. Meryon is best known for his prints, Etchings in Paris. In the series, he captured disappearing views of medieval Paris with remarkable attention to detail. Meryon made numerous images of the same architectural structures taken from different perspectives around the center of Paris, primarily the Ile de la Cité, not more than a 20-minute walk from his home. The location dates to Roman times. The iconic Notre Dame de Paris was sacred as a cathedral and especially treasured by the people living in the area. The mid-19th century saw renewed interest in the country's medieval heritage. In the arch of the Notre Dame bridge, Meryon's view is unexpected, especially when compared with the photograph on the right from the early 1850s, using a more conventional angle shot from the bridge. Meryon's vantage point is from the water level of the Seine. Rather than focusing on only the bridge, Meryon directs our attention to boatsmen and a man hanging down precariously at work. The underside of one of the bridge's arches frames the wood pilings of the Le Pont Notre Dame that was demolished in 1851. Further in the distance are the bridge Pont au Change and the Palais de Justice towers. The artist created a dramatic contrast of light and dark, used crisp lines, and bestowed a haunting intensity. Blackbirds, possibly ravens, fly in the sky. Meryon's prints caught the eye of poet and art critic Charles Baudelaire and a younger generation of artists and printmakers. Meryon was among the first to move from making reproductive prints of other artworks to original creative etchings. His entire reputation and career was connected with printmaking. Charles Baudelaire became an advocate for etching in his critical writing and became close friends with painter Edouard Manet after meeting him in 1859. We see an etched portrait of the poet by Manet here. In an essay entitled The Salon of 1846 on the heroism of modern life, Baudelaire contended that contemporary urban life, all with its fleeting nature, was a worthy subject for high art. The new themes would necessitate an equally modern technique and style. Many of the 19th century artists, including Impressionists, would follow this call to be painters of modern life and moved away from traditional, mythological, historical, and religious subjects. In 1860, Edouard Manet made his first original print, and the medium became important to him throughout his career. From 1862 to 1869, the artist etched 5 portraits of Baudelaire. The 2 portraits seen here were published in Charles Asselineau's monograph on the poet. The portrait on the left, modeled naturalistically with hatching, went through 4 states and was based on a daguerreotype of Baudelaire. On the right, Manet focused on pure line. A similar portrait can be found in his oil painting, Music in the Tuileries of 1862, Manet's first attempt to depict contemporary life on a grand scale. Modernized Paris showcased thousands of new gas lamps, fountains that provided fresh drinking water, advertising kiosks, and even public bathrooms, seen in Félix Buhot's 2 prints. In Buhot's portrayal of Paris, he was interested in rendering the changing effects of atmospheric and weather conditions. He was a printmaker rather than a painter and a master of technical experimentation. In this print, the rain gave Buhot an opportunity to concentrate on depicting the overcast sky and the remarkable reflections of the cabs and horses on wet surfaces created through horizontal lines. The long hash marks in the sky help convey the overcast weather. The sky is nearly the same tone as the street surface, giving this entire scene a gray cast. Every time the artist makes significant changes to the plate and prints print impressions, it is called a state. Winter Morning on the Quai de Hotel Dieu included 14 states. In the stages of creating his prints, Buhot would often make changes in the composition, the ink color, how he wiped the plate, and the type of paper. He experimented with papers matching the texture and tint with the nature of the print. Buhot could market these as unique impressions, which challenges our notion of the print as a multiple. In Winter in Paris, Buhot combined etching with dry point's velvety lines to give the snowy street scene a diffuse quality so typical of a wet snow flurry. In the margins, additional drawings show the after effects of the snowstorm. A group of people warm their hands, horses are victims of the cold, and other people skate on the frozen Seine. Buhot's small drawings and borders are a trademark element in his work. He referred to them as symphonic margins. This motif may have been inspired by medieval manuscript illuminations, where the use of borders for ornamentation or supplemental imagery related to the central image, and that was common. On the left is another print by Buhot. The June 30th, 1878 festival marked a special day. It was the first official national holiday since the defeat of Napoleon III and the establishment of the Third Republic. It was also held during the Universal Exposition. The excitement over the celebration made an enormous impact. Buhot commemorated this momentous event in national holiday on Boulevard de Clichy. Impressionist painter Claude Monet captured the feeling of patriotism on the right. Painted from a bird's eye view, the scene is nearly claustrophobic with fluttering tricolor flags of France and hordes of people in the street. Buhot enjoyed being the detached observer on the street. His studio was located along the Boulevard Clichy on the southern edge of Montmartre in Paris that was changing into a bohemian neighborhood. His vantage point was at ground level, immersing us in the street activity. Waving flags decorate the buildings. A young boy who strolls with his mother is outfitted in a soldier's uniform with a plumed hat and a rifle, perhaps embodying the patriotic trust in the relatively new government. The margins reveal additional glimpses of the street life. Children run with paper lanterns on long poles, a firecracker is set off, causing a commotion. Dogs scamper about, and people gather and converse. The marginalia allowed Buhot to expand the main subject in the center. Buhot intensified the energy through the use of simultaneous activities in the center and the borders. He evoked the multi-sensory experience of walking down the street and being bombarded with fragmented images, sounds, and smells that come from all directions. Manet created 75 etchings and 25 lithographs during his lifetime. In many etchings, he reworked painting compositions but explored it in more graphic terms. This is the case with Le Gamin, the name for a street child. The painting was executed in 1860 and is in a private collection. Manet also used the same composition in a lithograph in 1868. The etched line in our print is more crisp, unlike the soft lines of the lithographic crayon or the paintbrush. Perhaps it extends a more gritty quality to the young boy. The so-called street child or gamin, as well as other people seen on the streets, became familiar images appearing in art and literature. These are a few examples from our collection. The gamin was the object of the middle class's fascination, at times exotic or a threat. They were likely accessible and willing models. While Manet portrayed the lower classes as subjects, his approach was detached. It was not to point out a social injustice. American artist Arthur Heinzelman was an established printmaker by the time he and his family made Paris their home in 1921. There he met master printer Eugène Delettre, from whom Heinzelman learned more of the intricacies of etching. He was known for his fine portraits. On the left is a gamin from Borgio, perhaps Italy. The artist used dry point to create this sympathetic portrait. As the dry point needle moves through the copper plate, it creates a metal burr on either side of the incised line. The burr holds extra ink and gives dry point its trademark fuzzy lines. This is especially effective in defining the boy's wavy locks and the soft dark eyes. Heinzelman created many street scenes, such as the print on the right entitled Paris. Framed artwork is hanging and stacked around the entrance. A young boy holds a basket, possibly another gamin similar to Manet's. James Abbott McNeill Whistler made his earliest etchings in the mid-1850s when he lived in Paris. 12 etchings from nature, known as the French set, includes the print Fumette. For the series, he portrayed working women, the rag pickers, tinkers, flower sellers, and dressmakers. Eloise, nicknamed Fumette, was known for her quick temper. She was Whistler's mistress and worked in the Latin Quarter as a dressmaker. Thought to be a gypsy, her bohemian character is suggested here by her hair worn loose in defiance of convention and crouching pose. Sympathetic to realist and naturalist ideas current in France, the American artist avoided idealization or suggestions of universal meaning. Evidently pleased with the print, the artist sent an impression to the Paris Salon of 1859. At the other end of the spectrum, here we have depictions of fashionable women on the streets. Jules Jacquemart, on the right, was trained in etching at a young age by his father. He went on to create original prints, although he became better known for his reproductive prints. As an Armenian, Edgar Shahin, on the left, faced political persecution in Turkey, and he and his mother fled to France, while his father stayed behind. This experience heightened his awareness of suffering he observed around him. After arriving in Paris, he studied briefly at the Académie Julian. In spring 1899, Shahin attempted his first etching. He apprenticed himself to Eugène Delettre, learning to work with etching, soft grounds, aquatint, dry point, and color printing. By the end of the year, he completed 25 prints. Shahin became an avid recorder of street life in the city, sketching from the view from his apartment. He was interested in painting genre scenes, and he was empathetic to the poor and the down and out. Realizing he could not make a good living painting lower-class genre subjects, Shahin channeled his energy into printmaking. Shahin was a talented portraitist and became fascinated with women, whether they were actresses, prostitutes, dancers, and young mothers. Dry point was the perfect medium for this image of an Italian woman, also known as Portrait of Madame B. Dry point lines are characterized by its rich velvety quality, which is effective in creating the soft textures of her stylish tall hat with plumes and deep black blouse. Dry point also allows for fine work. Shahin was able to contrast these bold areas with sensitively handled features. While these artists and the Impressionists depicted contemporary urban life with railway stations, ports, and parks, they rarely focused on the Industrial Revolution with machines and workers. Most subjects featured urban entertainment and leisure activities. Some artists felt a sense of nostalgia for pre-industrial times. They created views of the old Paris, like Meryon. Many artists depicted the rural landscapes in its pure primeval state, and the peasant, both representations of permanence and continuity in the face of dramatic change. As railway connections around Paris improved, many middle-class urban dwellers took refuge in the rural outskirts during the summertime and weekends. They sought an antidote to the noise and activity of a city that was transforming and modernizing. From around 1830 to 1870, a group of painters worked in the forest of Fontainebleau, 35 miles southeast of Paris. It offered 42,000 acres of unspoiled woods, marshes, and meadows. Artists such as Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot and Charles François Daubigny, seen here, became later known as the Barbizon School, named after the village at the edge of the forest where the Auberge Jean Inn was located, one of their informal meeting places at day's end. At the time, the French Academy and the annual Paris Salon, the most important juried art exhibition in the country, promoted neoclassical subjects in a style emulating the Renaissance and classical antiquity. Landscapes, largely Italian, panoramic, and idyllic, were used as backdrops to historical, religious, and mythological themes, like the work of Claude Lorrain on the right. Barbizon School artists sketched and painted naturalistic studies in the open air, satisfying their desire to experience nature directly. They were precursors to the Impressionists, often finishing their paintings in the studio. In this comparison between Daubigny and Laurent, we can see Daubigny moving away from the popular trends. He and the Barbizon School artists painted and etched more intimate views, not sweeping panoramas, of local indigenous areas, not foreign, and translated their firsthand observations into more personal responses to the landscape, infusing a new sense of naturalism rather than idealized pastoral views. Artists look back to examples of 17th century Dutch landscape paintings and etchings, and to English painter John Constable, whose Haywain of 1821 was exhibited in Paris in 1824. Daubigny picked up the etching needle in 1839. He made wood and steel engravings for illustrated travel guides, poetry editions, and novels. In 1841, he made the unusual decision to submit a portfolio of 6 original etchings to the Paris Salon. Between 1839 and the year of his death, Daubigny created more than 150 prints, far more than his fellow Barbizon artists Jean-François Millet and Corot. Mainly self-taught as an etcher, Daubigny trained with his father, who was a classical landscape painter. He apprenticed to an engraver and was later to publish 2 albums of etchings in 1850 and 1851. After meeting Corot in 1849, landscapes painted from nature became increasingly important to him. He enjoyed painting river scenes so much that in 1857, he converted a boat into a floating studio, allowing him to explore the rivers Seine, Marne, and Oise. In 1860, he settled in Auvers-sur-Oise in southern France, the subject of our print on the left. In this tangle of tall grasses is a walking path leading our eye back to the apple trees and one lone worker, who practically blends into the scene as if the person is literally part of the landscape. On the right is the first state, whereas ours is the fourth and final state. In the final state, Daubigny simplified the composition by eliminating the birds and much of the initial cloud cover. He also reduced the number of workers to 1. Interestingly, the Barbizon School was instrumental in the preservation of parts of the Fontainebleau forest, arguing for its aesthetics and importance to artists. Painter Theodore Rousseau wrote to a government official asking to safeguard the forest from harmful practices performed by the Forest Administration. This resulted in Napoleon III agreeing to protect by law 1,097 hectares as an artistic reserve and referred to it as a museum of gigantic trees to benefit artists, tourists, and nature lovers. Alphonse Legros learned etching by watching a colleague in Paris who worked as a commercial engraver. He taught himself etching around 1857 and medallion making. Legros produced over 704 etchings. The poet Baudelaire was an important mentor and friend. Legros moved to England in 1863 through the suggestion of his friend Whistler. Although he became a British citizen in 1881, many of his subjects continued to be the French countryside. The Liane River, seen on the right, is in northern France and flows into Boulogne-sur-Mer. Legros had a delicate light touch of the etching needle. In both prints, people are synthesized into the landscape as he focuses on the peaceful work and daily pastimes along the waterways. Portability of materials and the invention of tube paint were key to working outdoors. Artists could also transport lightweight copper plates prepared with a ground for etching, ready for sketching with an etching needle like a drawing. The plate could then be etched in the studio later. Edmond Chalaillon's etching depicts the Marne River, an eastern tributary of the Seine. With far more dramatic contrasts of light and shadow than Legros, it features an intricate network of short lines moving in different directions for the tree's dense foliage and grass. It contrasts with the steady hatching of the river's surface interrupted by the light lily pads. Like the Forest of Fontainebleau and its hamlets, small villages east of Lyon attracted landscape artists like Adolphe Appien. In Bourbonche Marsh of 1868, Appien depicts a view of 3 herons wading in a wetland area along the Aisne River upstream from Lyon. The etching shares the same composition with the painting Grey Weather, Marsh of the Bourbonche, that was exhibited in the 1869 Paris Salon. In the painting, he used soft grays and greens in the trees and foliage, and feathery strokes to create diffuse forms, contributing to a tranquil, romantic mood in the style reminiscent of Corot. It is possible that the etched version was intended as a graphic reproduction of his salon painting, which was common practice at the time. His friend Daubigny used them to help promote his own career. Original non-reproductive etchings appeared first in the mid-1840s and became more common in the early 1850s. Appien's etched version seems more of an interpretation than reproduction. It evokes an impression rather than pure description in the rendering of light, atmosphere, and water. Appien captures the placid nature of the marsh with tightly spaced, steady hatch marks that capture the reflections in the water. He uses a thin film of ink or plate tone and delicate lines for the clouds in the sky to extend a sense of atmosphere. Appien created another etching the same year of the Bourbonche area that is on the right. Although larger with its vertical format, he presents a narrow, tree-lined view of the Aisne River. Appien's plate was printed in the first volume of his journal, L'Illustration Nouvelle, published by Auguste Cadart, and later the plate was used in P.G. Hamerton's Etching and Etchers. It is worth spending a moment on Auguste Cadart for his support of etching. Cadart founded a society of etchers named the Société des Aquafortistes, which championed etching as an artistic expression on par with painting and drawing. In 1859, Cadart opened a gallery in Paris of paintings, original and reproduction prints, and photographs. Despite having a background working in the railways, Cadart focused his business on original etchings by contemporary artists and print publishing. Artists realized that through prints, their audience could broaden and their reputations could grow. Prints were also financially accessible to the middle class. Many of the etchings from our collection come from a large folio of original etchings entitled French Etchers, with comments by art critic and printmaker Roger Riordan. It was published in New York in 1884. Jules Bastien-LePage is often associated with the Barbizon school, and his work as an etcher took off in the early 1860s. However, he tended to be drawn to the farming areas of central France, as we see here in his depiction of a workhorse and a chicken in a stable. This segues us into images of agricultural life. The peasant emerged from the rural genre scene as a significant subject in the mid-19th century, found in literature, popular music, and the visual arts. Daily tasks of human laboring included scything, winnowing, harvesting, digging, shepherding, churning butter, and fetching water. Théophile Narcisse Chauveau, on the left, worked in painting, etching, and lithography. He made his first original etching in 1859 and created 41 etchings over his lifetime. He largely worked in landscape, becoming acquainted with Barbizon school artists Daubigny and Rousseau, and working around the forest of Fontainebleau. Edmond Rideau enjoyed a career as both a painter and an original etcher. Rideau became known for his scenes of romance, as on the right entitled He Loves Me, a Little, a Lot, where the young maiden has stopped her work to daydream. Auguste Vaillant-Péron, along with his brother and friend Jules Breton, often spent their summer working in Concala, in Brittany, France. In this etching, Vaillant-Péron has focused exclusively on this peasant harvesting, a chore tied to nature's seasonal cycle. She is silhouetted against the sunlight, giving her a robust monumental presence. The artist didn't leave us with many features to individualize her, largely obscuring her in darkness. Perhaps this gives her a more timeless quality. Jules Bastien-LePage, who grew up in the country, worked primarily on plein air, painting realistic rural scenes. He only made 5 etchings. He sought inspiration back in the small village of Daubigny, where he was born. He found the peasants residing there a fascinating subject. In return from the fields, a female worker is finished with work. She doesn't look out at us and directs our gaze to the vast fields and the work that has been finished or yet to be completed. A long rake rests on her shoulder, its size almost equal to her height, and probably reinforcing the harsh reality of the amount of work entailed. Thank you for joining me today. We will return on November 13th to look at comedy and criticism, satire in 19th and early 20th century in both Europe and North America, including the work of Thomas Nast, Honoré Dormier, William Gropper, and Francisco Goya.